The Fantastic Four have finally been cast! Jay can stop fretting over it. Marvel's release dates play musical chairs. Star Wars gaming is on the rise. Plus, a look into the tangled Madam Web. All of that and more on this week's Multiverse News. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for all the information about your favorite fictional universes. My name's Matthew Carroll, and on the panel with me today, we've got the wonderful Haley Hobbs. What's happening, Haley Hobbs?
Oh, hey, yay, I love being wonderful.
Well, I feel like if you add wonderful to your name and with the alliteration, it's definitely a comic book name, you know?
For sure.
That's like your ongoing title, the wonderful
I'm
Haley
just
Hobbs.
waiting for somebody to put me into comic form.
Yeah. All right. And Jay Scotty St. Clair, what's happening, buddy?
Yeah, it may not be a comic book name, but it does have a certain air to it, does it not? You know?
Yeah.
A certain Claire.
And Jay Sisson.
I don't have any strong opinions on my name. I'm just here to bring you the news.
Man has a name. To get started, as we've been doing lately, let's read a 5-star review. The Dentonators on Apple says, Multiverse News is a great way to get your geeky news. The anchors are a well-oiled machine, and with some weeks having almost no news, they still have me coming back for more. Oh, well, that is very sweet, Dentonators. Thank you.
Aww.
Ironically, the weeks with no news are our longest episodes somehow.
Yeah, somehow. I think we get cocky. We're like, we'll get through this. We'll get through this quickly, and then we're like,
there are no weeks with no news.
yeah. Especially since the strikes are over, I feel like the news has not been light at all.
Definitely not.
Speaking of the news, that's a perfect segue on this show. Every time.
Speaking of news,
that's why we're here.
It was a significant week in MCU news. Marvel Studios officially cast the Fantastic Four, which they revealed in a Valentine's Day Instagram post. Vanessa Kirby is our Sue Storm. Joseph Quinn is Johnny Storm, Ibn Mas Bacharach will portray Ben Grimm, and Pedro Pascal has taken on the role of Reed Richards. The studio also updated release dates for both Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts, with Thunderbolts moved up to May 2nd, 2025, and Fantastic Four pushed back to July 25th, 2025. That's my birthday. How do we foresee all of these updates and details factoring into the MCU's latest phase?
Well, the MCU's back alive, depending on who you talk to, because last week was full of exciting news and a womp, which we'll talk about later. But I was really, really thrilled with the Fantastic Four, confirmation. It wasn't really an announcement when Jay's Roman Empire has been going on for as long as it's been going on, and that we've been reporting on it since basically the show started, but it was still really exciting. They did it in such a cute way, kind of a unique approach. It wasn't like some big splash at Hall H at Comic-Con. It was just this really sweet little Valentine's Day post in this mid-century modern style that I was super obsessed with. So loving that the casting is confirmed. And I mean, as I break down who's playing who, I love Pedro. That's not really a surprise here. So I'm really excited to see him in this role. Even though he's in everything, he's not obnoxious about it like some people can be. And so more Pedro is fine with me. I think Vanessa Kirby is the embodiment of Sue Storm. I think of her from The Crown. She played young Princess Margaret. She was great. She was in Napoleon. And then I think most recently of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, the scene where she's playing herself, but she's playing Haley Atwell playing her character, and just how well she did in that scene. It was very funny. I always love when actors have to, it was kind of like the Chris Evans, Tom Hiddleston, Loki thing in Thor 2, to liken it to something our audience might know.
Come on, go back to Face Off, right? Like Face Off?
So I think she's the one I really love the most. Joseph Quinn, I don't know. I know he was in Stranger Things. He looks great. Let's go for it. But then Ebon Moss-Bachrach is, or Bacharach?
Bacharach.
A lot of people are lauding his casting for being the first Jewish person to play this character. And I want to highlight how important that is because Jack Kirby, who created these characters, identified the most with Ben Grimm, the Thing, somebody who really felt like an outsider and who never felt like they fit in somewhere. And so I think it's really nice that Marvel recognizes that this time around and that we've got Eben playing that. So just really excited. Really loving that they're not going to do an origin story. For doing what we wanted, which was getting them fully fleshed out in our MCU. So I know that's kind of a long monologue about that, but I know Matt and Scotty, you kind of chatted on it on MCU Cast, so I was like, this is my time to write down all my thoughts and get them all out here on Multiverse News. And then the moving up of the dates, I think it's interesting with Thunderbolts, all the things we've been talking about, all the kind of turmoil it's gone through. So they've pushed that way up. So I hope it's a solid outing. And then, yeah, big July.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen all four of these actors bring it in various roles and like be at the top of their game in various roles. So I think it just speaks to that this is a really, really strong cast. I mean, we've been there since the beginning. The early casting rumors of like Adam Driver and Margot Robbie and all of that. This is a really good group of actors put together that I feel like bring a lot of different strengths to these roles. We've talked about it in the past whenever these actors were first rumored, and so we kind of broke down what we thought about them more specifically. To me, what was really new and that came out of this post was the actual post itself confirming to us that this film will probably, at least in part, take place in the past, will probably take place in the 1960s. The aesthetic is really cool. They're wearing Fantastic Four outfits, but they are like sweaters. They have like white gloves and white boots on. I just think like that is a really cool aesthetic that they're going for. It's that we're taking a lot of the 2000s superhero films of taking themselves a little too seriously. One of the most recent Fantastic Four sort of does that, right? It kind of takes itself extremely seriously. And this seems to know what it is, which I think we saw from Matt Shakman when he directed WandaVision. Like WandaVision was hyper self-aware of what it was. And to me, this seems like it's doing that. I am seeing online that this film, at least what people who are involved with it think that it's probably going to be, is it will tell concurrent stories. So it will not take place all in the 1960s, but like it will take place in the 1960s and it will take place sort of in the present day, kind of alongside of one another. It'll kind of go back and forth, which I think makes sense. I don't think that 60s aesthetic of a movie is for everyone, but I think it's powerful, and so like I like that idea of being able to sort of marry those two things together. But as far as the release dates go, man, it makes for a really, really interesting 2025 from a Marvel Cinematic Universe standpoint. That means assuming these dates don't change, which we know how that's been, but that would assume at the moment you're getting Captain America Brave New World in February, then Thunderbolts, then Fantastic Four in July, and then Blade in November, if that date holds. So those are four really big tentpole properties. Then you've also got Superman Legacy 2 weeks before Fantastic Four in July, launching the DCU. So it's a lot of material kind of coming out in that year. So that seems to be, at least at the moment, a really big and interesting year that we got coming up here. But yeah, I think it raises our excitement a lot for the MCU. I mean, you have the Deadpool 3, you have this, you have the X-Men 97, which we'll talk about later. Like a lot of big things are happening here in the MCU, and I think it raises the excitement level for sure.
Yep. The MCU is just, I mean, it's out of the dustbin of history, It's been resurrected from whatever calamity people were claiming it was in the middle of. I just feel like this whole week of announcements, I'm kidding, of course. People have been saying that about the MCU for a while, but we've just had nothing but bangers lately. And this is a huge, I'm all in on all four of these. And I trust Marvel in their casting decisions. Honestly, all their, even the movies and TV shows I don't like, I still almost like their casting decisions always. I can't think of one I don't like. Malekith, but it wasn't his fault. He's great. But I was mad.
Christopher Eccleston.
No, I love the casting, but I'm mad because they wasted Eccleston. Like, he's behind a big rubber thing and they never give me anything. Sorry, just trying to think of one I don't like. But yeah, I'm just really excited. I think, as you said, Haley, we talked about it extensively on the MCU cast. So me and Jay Scotty talked about it a bunch there. So I'm not going to go on too long except to just say I'm really excited. And I think all of these people have work in their past that shows that they can pull these characters off and that they're flexible and can do a lot of cool things. Particularly Pedro and Vanessa Kirby. And the other two, I feel like, are a little less known quantities, but what I've seen of them, I love. So, yeah. He's one of my favorite parts of The Bear and one of my favorite parts of Stranger Things, respectively. So, I'm really excited.
I'm really satisfied with all of this casting. It sounds really, really solid. Vanessa Kirby is the standout for me, as I have stated. And then I think Joseph Quinn is probably the most unproven quantity. He kind of really feels like, he had this opportunity with Stranger Things, and he's just kind of, capitalizing on that opportunity. But again, from what I've heard, he got 15 minutes of screen time, and people have absolutely latched onto him. And from what I saw with the promotional artwork, he looks like he's going to be a phenomenal Johnny Storm. So I do think about, as much as I loved the Instagram post on Valentine's Day and the way they did the post and the 60s aesthetic and vibe and the way it actually looked like an advertisement from the 60s. I loved all that, but I do wonder, like, as the news cycle has gone on, about the timing. Like, yes, they were coming off the heels of the Deadpool trailer and there's a lot of enthusiasm for Marvel, but I also can't help but think, like, had this news come out like on a week of its own, it probably would have dominated the news cycle. And yeah, it's kind of, I see both sides of it, because like we have known that this is going to be the cast for so long. They just kind of needed to get it out there. But I just hope the lack of staying power in the conversations I'm seeing are not indicative of a lack of enthusiasm, because with the release date of, July 2025, I think that is a show of confidence. Maybe that release date is going to change, but from Marvel's side, I think it is a strong show of confidence, which is what they need with the first family.
I think the lack of conversation is, I saw a lot of conversation about it. I saw a lot of excitement, but a lot of the lack of conversation is because we already knew it.
Sure.
Sure. A lot of that conversation happened 4 weeks ago or whatever. I heard a lot more back then, and now it seems like, it's not old news, it's new news, but it was sort of so rumored that we kind of have already had those conversations, I guess.
Kevin Feige, a little on the list of this show, deciding to release this less than 24 hours after we released last week's episode. Just know that we noticed and we're not pleased.
Yeah.
Jay's real salty about it, Kevin.
Kevin, we are displeased.
Hey, EBIN, if you're listening.
When that post came down, I think the first thing I texted our just like Multiverse News group chat was just like, "You've got to be effing kidding me" or something. Because I was like, so mad.
Yeah, you dropped an expletive, and I was like, Jay's mad.
Great. All right, moving on. Dune Part 2 held its world premiere in London last week, bringing several valuable nuggets of information to the surface in addition to showcasing some truly out-of-this-world fashion. Most surprisingly, Anya Taylor-Joy was in attendance, confirming her unknown participation in the sequel. While she disclosed her character to those in attendance, it has not yet been officially announced. Following the premiere, first reactions to the film hit the internet with overwhelming positivity and praise, citing it as superior to the first installment and lauding it as a sci-fi masterpiece. Do we believe in the prophecy?
To co-opt Jim Carrey as Lloyd Christmas's line from Dumb and Dumber, just when I didn't think you could go and do anything to make me more excited, you did it. So I was incredibly hyped for Dune 2, but these first reactions coming out, just the overwhelming positivity and just the fact that it's being cited as a masterpiece, better than the original. And I love the original. I don't know, this just is overwhelmingly positive for me and does a lot to boost my enthusiasm and excitement. As far as the world premiere goes, it does seem like it was quite the event. I would have loved to be there in person, but I was reminded about how much of a fashionista I am not. I like to think I am, reasonably fashionable, but when I saw some of these outfits, like Zendaya specifically, more power to her. I love the confidence, but I am just not in the fashion world because I was like, what am I looking at? But I did think the Anya Taylor-Joy aspect of it all was really intriguing, because this is such a high profile movie with such a stacked cast. To find out that we have such a talented player joining the fray so late in the game was huge news. And, she did tell the people that were in in attendance who her character is, and I have had that knowledge spoiled for me. I will not spoil that for anyone else.
She's the sandworm. She plays the voice of the sandworm.
I can't really say anything else without getting into spoiler territory, but I will be interested to see what the reception to her character is. But again, all of the early reactions have been so positive that I think, this movie is just going to fire on all cylinders like I expect it does. And I'm trying not to go in with unrealistic expectations, but the hype is real.
You can tell me later, Scotty. I kind of want to know.
Okay.
Zendaya was in some vintage Mueller piece for people who do follow fashion. Supreme Leader Ashley Koff and I had a great time breaking down the fashion of that red carpet. And
she was out there looking like C-3PO.
Yeah, you could even see her little booty cheeks. She had like a body glove on. It was, whatever, but go her, whatever. It caused a stir.
For real.
Scotty's girl Florence looked the best, I thought, in my opinion. And yeah, Dune Part 2 is shaping up really nicely. I have some sneaking suspicions about what is going to happen in that movie, and I'll keep those to myself. But there's not much more to say other than it looks super epic.
Typically, the reviews that come out of these early red carpet events are always positive, and that makes sense, right? I mean, if you're a journalist and you're invited, like, you want to be invited again, so you're going to go on and talk positively. But this one does seem a little different. Like, it seems like people are going out of their way to praise this movie as not just a good movie or good visuals or great acting, but people are putting in this category of like, every 10 years or so, there's a movie that comes along that sort of defines a decade, and this is one of them. It seems to be kind of one of that prevailing nuggets of information that I see being put out there a lot. So for me, I try not to get ahead of myself too much at these red carpet events, just because you're not going to come out of a red carpet event and trash a movie. But at the same time, like, I feel myself kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit with this one, because just the praise for it does feel different. I mean, I saw people comparing the action in it to, like, I haven't seen action like this in a movie that made me feel this way since I saw, like, the Battle of Helm's Deep and the Two Towers or something like that, like that level. And that's, and that's just extremely lofty praise that you would give a movie. And I've seen this movie called the sci-fi masterpiece of this generation, and so it's like there's a lot. I mean, this movie has got a lot riding on it, and it's got very big shoes to fill and big expectations, but it seems like, at least to this point, it is meeting those expectations. So yeah, I think it's gonna be huge. I think a lot of people caught it in the theater, but I think a lot of people have caught up on it on streaming ever since. And I think just there's a lot of anticipation for this thing. I think people are going to go see it like crazy.
It's interesting. It's hard for me to like place this. I was never a Dune fan growing up or anything, and like it always felt like more of a niche science fiction thing, like a little more I don't know, less known. Obviously, it's not Star Wars, it's not Star Trek. It's sort of like the related to those, but sort of the I guess not as big. And it's interesting because to hear people saying that about the sequel makes me excited for it, but also, while it was the first one was a big cultural moment, I don't think hit the heights that they're talking about with this one. So it's interesting to see if this one, if it is that much of a masterpiece, if it can sort of retroactively make the series that level of popularity that it would deserve if it is that sort of masterpiece, or if it will continue to fly sort of under the radar as like, still the sort of lower level of the franchises, because there's a lot more books and stuff, right, in the Dune series, and I know they're not as popular, but like they could probably do more with this universe.
Yeah, you get into murky territory there as well, because I think Frank Herbert wrote 5 books and had a 6th book mostly done before he died, and then his son like co-wrote a lot of books, and like the fandom is divided on whether or not his son's books are canon or not.
Okay. Yeah. Still 5 books. There's a lot of content there that if this was the masterpiece they're talking about, if it was something that like made people think and talk a lot about this franchise, like you could see more of this being made, or and I don't know that Denis Villeneuve has any plans to do that, so it would probably have to go to someone else, and then you got a whole will it be? Then there'll be the same conversations like you're talking about with the authorship, where it's like, yeah, do we really consider this one canon because it's not done by the same director? It's I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. It being talked about in that way makes me excited for its popularity, possibly, and like the conversations that could happen around it.
I mean, part 1 came out when it was late 2021, so things were still not, we were still not 100% back to, quote, normal in the world, and I think that's why it got more people watching it on streaming, but I think the hype around part 2 is extremely real, and the thing about Dune is that it's such foundational science fiction. When you read it, you can see how much was taken by George Lucas and put into his Star Wars universe, like, a lot. And things are still, like, being adapted from it to this day in the Star Wars universe. There was something in the recent season of The Mandalorian that made me go, oh, I just read that in Dune. Like, so it's classic in that way.
I know what you're talking about.
I can't remember what it was. That's the stupid
Was it the
thing.
Christopher Lloyd episode?
Maybe.
I'm thinking it was, but...
So in any case, like, even though it's been maybe less well known in modern times, it really is a classic for science fiction. And I think Denis Villeneuve is paying it homage for that reason.
Dune also, it should be said, was part of that crop of films that were released on HBO Max at the same time as they were put into theaters. So, and they were only released for a month, but still, that was 1 month that you could watch that movie on release day at home. You did not have to go to a theater. So the movie still, I just looked it up, cleared $433 million worldwide, which doesn't seem like a lot for a movie of that size, but that is something that you just have to keep in mind. It's like, it was 2021, we were just coming off of COVID, and a lot of people caught that movie at home on their couch. They didn't go out to the theater.
Yeah, it's true.
And what was that release model called? Day and date.
Day and date release.
I hope a term I never have to hear again. I still don't know exactly what it means.
Remember when Disney was like, you want to pay $30 to watch this movie? No.
Remember when people did it too? It was like,
yeah.
Oh, never.
Crazy.
Something else that makes me think a lot about when you're talking about the way it's foundational, and even talking about the Battle of Helm's Deep. I feel like I'm staying on the story too long. I'm sorry, but I had to say this. Something that my experience, having not read all the Lord of the Rings books, watching those movies, something I had the experience of was having a really hard time being surprised because I'd seen so many things that were successors of that story that like you're talking about with the Mandalorian or whatever. And so when I was watching it, I was like, oh, well, these guys are going to show up or this is going to happen because I just seen so many stories sort of based on the lore of this story. And I'm interested to see if they can if Denis Villeneuve can do what I think Peter Jackson didn't do for me, which is like, even though it's foundational, even though there's probably been 1 million, it launched 1,000 sci-fi ships. Like, can it surprise me? Can he like make that battle feel surprising to me and interesting to me, even though I've probably seen a bunch of successors that did similar things in the years since? So I don't know. All right, up next, Star Wars seems all in on video game expansion of the saga's lore this week, with developer of Jedi, Fallen Order, and Survivor, Respawn Entertainment, reported to be in the early stages of creating a first-person Mandalorian bounty hunter video game. This news was coupled with comments from Cameron Monaghan, the actor who provides the likeness, voice, and motion capture for Cal Kestis, the protagonist of Respawn's Star Wars games, who said he'd be open to portraying the character in live action under the right circumstances. How do we feel about the potential of more video game and live action crossovers trending in the galaxy far, far away?
Yeah, we read a story last week about how Disney is committing fully to getting involved in the video game sphere with a massive investment in Epic Games. And this, to me, is an offshoot of that. Disney themselves have sort of given out their Star Wars license to a lot of different gaming developers over the years. And some have been met with success and others have not in that time. And that's always kind of the thing with Star Wars. People who play Star Wars games, it's like, some of them are, when they're good, they're very good. When they're bad, they're just very, very bad. And in the good category is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That that game was very interesting. It was plugged into the canon very well. It worked on a lot of different levels. And Cameron Monaghan, who plays the main character, it's more than just voicing. He looks exactly like Cameron Monaghan because he does all of the motion capture for that character. So it was a full acting role to be able to play that particular character in that game. And so to me, I think making the jump to live action makes complete sense. Where it is on the canon, it's between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope that his story is taking place, and then the universe has sort of developed a few years after that around The Mandalorian, kind of like after Return of the Jedi. So it's totally conceivable that you could make that jump and plug him in. He's already an established actor. He's been in a lot of big projects. He played like the Joker in the Gotham series. He's been in things like like the however we categorize that show. He to me, like, that makes total sense. If he's on board, I think like you got to make that happen at some point, even if it's something small. As far as the Mandalorian game goes, I'm shocked that they haven't done this sooner. With the popularity of The Mandalorian, especially in season 1, where it was really, really embraced by Star Wars fans, I'm shocked that we haven't gone there already. But overall, I think this is exciting news. I think if you're a Star Wars fan, there's a lot to get excited about here, and if you're a fan of video games, there's a lot to be excited about here too.
I have 2 thoughts. If you're going to make a Mandalorian game, similar to our Indiana Jones discussion 2 weeks ago, like, why put it in first person? We want to see the Mandalorian flying around.
I'm with you.
I could see maybe if it's a VR game wanting to feel like you're in the helmet, but like other than that, I would like to see in third person and see the character running around.
Well, so that's the thing, that we just know that this is a Mandalorian bounty hunter game. We don't know that it is the Mandalorian. And for my purposes, I actually give Respawn a pass in this regard, because I've played some of their previous games outside of the Star Wars franchise, and they made the Titanfall games. And Titanfall 2 specifically was a first-person game where it had a lot of really cool gameplay elements. Like, you could do wall running, and you had these little like jet boosters that kind of like increased your maneuverability. And like, I think that would be perfect, like thinking about like a bounty hunter, like Mandalorian character with the jetpack and everything like that. You probably want it from the first person's perspective in order to like really get that satisfying, effect with the various tools and weapons you're going to be using. Because I think about that first season of The Mandalorian, and like, I remember when it came out, I thought it felt like the plot of a video game. Like, he's getting the armor upgrades, he's getting the weapon upgrades. Like, when he gets the whistling arrows, like, that feels like you just completed a mission. Now you got to unlock the new weapon. Now you get to use it. Like,
whistling birds, whistling
arrows, whistling birds. Thank you. I deserve that for the proto Joker.
Don't out nerd me. I'll out nerd you.
A good old fashioned nerd off.
Me versus Scotty.
But going back to the Cameron Monaghan or Monaghan, I don't know him well enough to know how he pronounces his name there, but I've seen him pop up in a few things, and I know he kind of like cut his teeth on the show Shameless. But I have really liked the Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games. I actually conveniently just beat the second game the previous weekend, and Jay, you kind of bring up how it is the actor in the games, like it is his likeness. That's a little bit of a problem going forward, because in the second game, it allows you to have so much customization. You can change his hair, you can change his facial hair. So like, if they bring a Cal Kestis onto screen that is not my Cal Kestis, there's going to be a hashtag campaign going on.
Restore the J. Scotty cut.
Yeah.
Hashtag not my Cal.
Yeah, but with the Bad Batch, we had kind of a little bit of a tease, and in season 1, they actually went to the same planet that Cal Kestis started off in the first game, Braca.
Oh, cool.
So I think in terms of like the timeline, they would have to lean towards the earlier days of like, the start of the rebellion because of Cameron Monaghan's involvement. I mean, I guess they could age him up if they wanted to, but why would you, is kind of my question. So
my only thought about Cameron Monaghan, I'm not sure. I thought it was Monaghan, but I don't really know. I think it
might even be Monaghan. Sorry.
Yeah. Three different ones today. But good old Cameron, our good friend Cameron, friend of the show. I think I love him. I think he's really great, and I particularly love his Joker. Like, on Gotham, he had 2 versions of the Joker that he played, and they tried to make them very different. And he ends up being Joker number 1 and Joker number 2 on that show. And he's supposed to be the inspiration for a future Joker, whatever. But I just loved his first Joker. He was great. He went all in. He was like really, really, I don't know, bought into the Joker character. And like, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I just love his Joker. And I think it's an underrated Joker.
What was his name, like Jerome or something like that?
Yeah, Jerome. And then his brother is sort of succeeds the role, and then his brother, the first Joker, is very much the Joker you think of when you think of the Joker. He's like crazy, wild, funny, and then the next Joker, they decided to make his brother a like twin brother, a like completely stoic, quiet Joker, and it was interesting to see the same actor take both of those roles, but like. Was not on board with that second one. I was like, no, go back to being funny and crazy and wild. And like, who is this guy? This isn't the Joker. He's both my favorite and least favorite Joker on that show. Not really my favorite Joker, but a good Joker. Okay, Madam Web released in theaters last week, and with a $26.2 million 6-day haul, C+ cinema score, and 13% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes, the reception across the board is downright pitiful. The performance is not entirely unexpected, as the film has been saddled with a laughable marketing campaign, disparaging comments from Madam Web herself, Dakota Johnson. This seems to mark a new low for high-profile comic book adaptations, so we ask, what exactly went wrong with Madam Web, and are there any lessons Sony can learn in time to save Kraven from a similar fate?
Well, I'm going to say this.
We've all foreseen it, which I think is so cool.
We've all seen it.
What did you think, Haley?
Unfortunately. It's bad. Okay, so
what?
It's bad. We all know it's bad.
Hot take.
I know. It's controversial, you guys. When you think about all of these things that Sony tries to do with Spider-Man adjacent characters, remember that at the heart of this Spider-Verse, they're calling it, or as Brian and I called it on source pages, not Spider-Man-verse, remember that at the heart of it is Avi Arad. And Avi Arad is continuing to produce these movies for Sony, and he's not good at it. And one thing in particular about Avi Arad is he's not supportive of female characters. He wants characters on screen that will sell toys for his company, because that is still where he makes a lot of his money. And so they tried to, I'm going to quote, say, branch out and have a female-led superhero movie in their not Spider-Man verse with still not Spider-Man in it. And of course it failed. And not only that, they had one movie plot and they completely changed it into the movie we saw. And I don't know which one would have been better. Probably both of them would have been bad, regardless. But then you put Milquetoast Dakota Johnson in it as the leading lady, which she's really not one. And it was just a recipe for disaster. And that's what it was. I think the funniest thing about it was the baby shower scene, because, I mean, represent, that was accurate. But it just speaks to these greater issues that lie at the heart of Sony. And they're going to put Kraven out, and Kraven might be a little better. I'm going to get on my feminism platform and say because it's a male-led movie. But I don't have any kind of faith or hope in the future of this verse. And I don't understand why they won't I understand why they won't partner with Marvel Studios, because money, but think about how much more money you'd make if you partnered with Marvel Studios and made good movies.
Yep.
This movie was an absolute train wreck. Like, from top to bottom, it was a train wreck. And are we talking spoilers or no? What do you guys think? Do we talk spoilers?
Probably not a good idea.
I'll try to stay away from it. It's hard to talk about how much of a train wreck it is without talking about spoilers. So I think if you want to talk about it in more in depth, you and Scotty and Matt covered it on the MCU cast. Go listen to that, because you guys did a good job going more into depth as to some of the issues that I really had with it. The story of it was clearly so just chopped up to death from different ideas and then strung together. Like, there are so many plot lines that never come together in a meaningful way and make no sense and do not connect together. There are so many just like things that the characters do that they wouldn't do, that a normal human would not do. Like, things that you're just like, why would you say that or do that way? Like, the ADR was so just like was offensively bad throughout this movie. Like, clearly the lines were shaped so much in post-production. And I think when the trailer for this movie first came out, I expressed a lot of optimism because I saw the core of an idea and I thought, okay, it's a time travel thing. We're trying to stop the death of someone with the stopping a thing from happening, and it's sort of Final Destination-y, and it's kind of like mid-2000s kind of campy horror type thing, and I was down with that. Like, if that was the idea that they were going to take it in, okay, I can see where that would be kind of cool. That sort of can kind of match up with the Madam Web from the comics if you kind of do what I think you're going to do with it. But we did not get that story at all. This was clearly an idea at some point that was taken and put through some sort of a, how do we make this into a marketing campaign, and how do we cut this up into a story that just on the other end does not work cohesively. And you could see you could see the red flags on the horizon very early. like Haley, you mentioned Dakota Johnson. It wasn't just her. It was a lot of the people from this cast were already jumping ship. Dakota Johnson fired her management a day after the Madam Web trailer came out. All right, because like this, I mean, you could end up like you see that and you just know. All right, the review embargo for the movie, critics could not talk about it until the day before release date. Okay, and that is a bad sign. When they say that, when they say like, hey, you can review my movie, but you cannot discuss it until the day before it comes out, that is almost universally a sign that they have zero confidence in the movie. And it was full court press for PR. Like, they went out and they said, hey, you want to look at Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney in these dresses at the premiere, like that was what they were pushing. They were not pushing the movie. They were like, check out the dresses. Oh, hey, Fantastic Four, did you guys see that? Deadpool 3. Like, it was full court press. Like, move on from this as fast as possible. Generally speaking, like, without talking about all the things I hated about the movie, which was like, we would be here all night, but it's just like, but like, it gives me zero confidence in the Sonyverse. It proves to me, which I already felt like there was little direction in tying this thing together. This is just more proof of that. If anything, this is like extra proof of that, because it's all of the lessons that should have been learned years ago have not been learned by this team that's knitting this thing together. And it's this thing. I mean, this thing's not like it's not. If you're looking for Madam Web 2, it's not happening. Like this. They've already the campaign for this movie, which I'll end with this, has already been like, come see it because it's so bad. It's cult classic. Like, you'll laugh. Like that has seemed to be the direction, and I guess that's the best way for it to go out. It's on some level.
Yeah. You guys mentioned it, but me and Jay Scott talked a lot about it on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. So I don't want to like go crazy detail. We talked for like an hour and a half about it. So like, it's bad, and it depresses me because I think there's a lot of good ideas in it. And they're just so like, I think the execution is just the worst execution I've seen on a large budget movie. Like I can't think of one that is worse. Like, there are movies I really, really don't like, and this one like blows them out of the water for like how bad it is, or they blow this one out of the water. However, it's just bad. And Dakota Johnson is the center of that. I think there's just so many things they could have done to make this a cooler or better movie. You mentioned Final Destination, Jay. I really wish this had been a straight up Final Destination style horror movie. There are flashes of like murders in the movie that could have been creative, but every time he just snaps a neck, like it's every time, that's the only way he kills someone, and it just feels like, let's make this as palatable and PG-13 as possible without any gore, while having a man like chase women trying to murder them. Like it just, I don't know. It just seems like you go one way or the other with it. It's just
that
such
dude's
a
part was
mess.
the worst part of the movie.
It was bad.
Oh, I love the marketing campaign geared around towards like, hey, check out these cool women superheroes in these costumes. Like, don't you want to see that? Isn't that empowering? They're all superheroes. And then how much screen time do the costumes get? About what, like 12 seconds or something? Like, it's like not even like you could tell the marketing was like, how do we sell this to people where they want to see it? And then like you go see the movie, you're like, well, that is not what I expected at all.
How do we sell toys?
It's true. That's one of those complaints that I've heard a lot that I don't really agree with, is the whole like they're only in their suits for a few seconds. That is definitely what I assumed from the trailer. Like the trailer says one day there'll be this. Really?
I took from the trailer that was where it was all going to come together, was that there was
interesting.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I definitely like that this is exactly the amount of screen time I was expecting based on the way the trailer was structured. Because it's all like, even in the trailer, it's all just like kind of these blurry visions of them in the future. It's like, look what they will be, and now we have to. Yeah, I guess I assumed that, so that didn't bother me at all. But yeah, it is weird. It is weird to like go through the process of fitting people for superhero costumes that don't look very good. They look like kind of CW cheesy, and then like only put them on screen for a few seconds.
Yeah, I don't know if I can describe this movie as so bad that it's good. It's certainly not that, but it's not good. And in the case of like Dune Part 2, I have to be very wary against like, expectations painting my experience. And it's kind of the exact opposite with Madam Web. Like my expectations were so low that I actually ended up like, this was not the worst of the Sony Spider-Man spin-off movies I've seen. Like I still feel like Venom Let There Be Carnage is the absolute worst. But it's easy to kick them when they're down and treat this movie like a punching bag. Like there's so much there that they did wrong. It's really easy to pick on it. But Matt, you kind of like you highlighted a little bit about how it made you sad because there was potential there, and then even Jay, like you describing like the getting to see these female superheroes in their costume for a second, and just kind of like the misleading with the marketing, and then even Haley, like you talking about how like Craven might benefit just because of the fact that like it's a male-driven film. Like that is the part that is really sad to me, because I did go see this movie and I went and saw it in theaters, and yeah, I was like laughing at parts you weren't supposed to laugh at, and I wasn't the only one. But at the end, there was this young girl that had to be like 11 or 12 years old, and she went to clap, and like it was just like, no, we're like, nobody's clapping at this thing. But like it just sucks, like the fact that like this little girl was excited. She saw characters that she thought she was going to be related to, and maybe in the moment she did, but it just kind of sucks that the story surrounding this movie, like she will probably have to like grow up being like, oh, I like that movie, but it is a trash movie. It's just sad and disappointing. But that being said, I can't have a laugh at the same time.
Well, that speaks to, I mean, this is a much bigger conversation, but it speaks to, and Haley, you kind of said something about this up at the top of this segment, is like a lot of these movies are, especially movies that are like female-centric superhero movies or comic book movies, are being made with male audiences in mind, and it bogs them down, right? And so like sometimes like this movie felt like that on some level to me. It was like they were so interested in speaking to the percentage, like how much a percentage is male versus female of this audience. Like there was so much more geared towards that rather than just like telling like a good story, like and I don't know, like I don't know how much I could speak to that, with just like like obviously I'm a guy talking about that, but it's just like, but like you can kind of pick up on that a little bit, like, and this movie, like it didn't. I'm thinking about like the Marvels, which kind of I felt like really leaned into what it wanted to be, and I know it suffered at the box office, but it's still like you knew what it was, and it was a movie that was. It didn't try to make itself be something that it wasn't. You know what I mean? And there's a bigger conversation there, I think, to be had about comic book movies, who's seeing them, and then how much is a studio catering to the audience that they think will see it, right? Rather than just kind of like focusing in on making the movie. And I mean, it's clear that there was a lot of research done on what is going to play with this thing, and there was not a lot of thought about like, how do we tell a good story?
to compare it to the Marvels is so unfair because the Marvels, and you weren't doing that, I'm just saying that's been done, and the Marvels was made by women for women, and it shows, and it's a compared to this movie, it's a freaking Oscar winner, right? But it's a good movie. It's a feel-good movie. I enjoyed watching it. A lot of people enjoyed watching that movie. It just suffered at the box office for reasons you can go back and listen to on our show that were out of its control. And this movie suffers for the opposite reason, just like you said. And they were like, oh, Dakota Johnson, she was in those BDSM movies. Like, let's get her. And then, oh, Sydney Sweeney, she's the hottest thing in the world right now. And then they tried to make her look like a 12-year-old, and it was creepy. And I was just like, is this what people want? Clearly it's not.
Hey, it's supposed to take place in the mid-2000s, and they did a She's All That. You know, they put her in glasses, and they were like, she's nerdy now.
She's a nerdy girl. She's got knee-high socks on with this tiny little skirt.
Just wait till she takes off her glasses. You'll see how pretty she is.
Yeah. It's giving Britney Spears and Baby One More Time.
Yep. It is. It is giving that.
It's not Britney's fault.
I'm not singing Toxic to myself right now.
That part made me chuckle.
Yeah, pretty good. Hey, if you like this show, try to support us over on Patreon. Patreon.com/multiverse newscast. We work really hard to bring you this show every week. So if you like it, give us that $1 a week tip that you might throw to us if it's worth it to you. Really would be appreciated. $4 to be a patron.
We got a giveaway going on over there right now, too. We're going to draw for a Multiverse News coffee cup. It looks exactly like you think it looks. It just has our logo on it. And, I think we're drawing for that on, I believe, the 29th of February. So if you are a paid at the paid tier on Patreon, which, again, is only $4 a month, you are automatically entered to win that. You don't have to do anything. And if you win it, I'll send it straight to you. So we do that, and we do that kind of frequently. Like, we've given away a lot of stuff over there on Patreon. So you come in, and you're going to be automatically entered to win a lot of stuff pretty regularly.
Ooh, I like it. Patreon.com/multiverse newscast if you want to join us. And we got a lot more stories to talk about after the break in the lightning round, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back to Multiverse News. First, let's kick it off with talking about our last week's Spotify poll. We talked about on our trailer episode, we talked about which trailer from the Super Bowl is most exciting to you. We got 2.5% say Fall Guy. A Quiet Place Day One got 5%. Wicked got 3.8%. Twisters got 0%. That is cold.
Ooh,
that is
I would have voted for
cold.
Twisters, but I forgot.
Well, why? Goodness, Haley. Goodness.
Sorry,
you
I don't
let
use
Twisters
Spotify.
down. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes got 7.6%, and I think to nobody's surprise, Deadpool and Wolverine got 81% of the vote from our little audience here. What are you guys most excited for?
I probably am most excited for Deadpool and Wolverine, but in terms of like trailers, I did think Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was the best trailer for my purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to stick to my guns on Twisters. Somebody's got to speak up for Glenn Powell in that white t-shirt.
I was going to say, but if Glenn Powell wasn't the lead, like if it was, I don't know, Chris Pratt or something, are we as excited? Probably not, right?
No.
Not, of course.
He's the Sydney Sweeney right now for women.
I can see Chris Pratt being like, oh, come on, another Twister. Come on. Another
Would you like some Pringles, Twister?
I don't have a good Chris Pratt voice, so you just got to roll with it.
Just channel your inner white guy. You'll get there.
Chris Pratt's actually in Twister, and he does a spot on Mario voice. It's weird.
It's Inception, the joke. It's too many layers.
It is. Totally is.
Oh, this is how I wind up in Wicked. Take the tornado, go to another franchise.
I get it.
Yes.
You better move on, or I'm going to bring Garfield. I
like that joke a lot. Scotty, because doesn't he use tornadoes in the Mario 3 uses the tornadoes to move them from map to map
call.
too.
Yeah,
so it's like
right.
that was a triple reference, Jay Scotty. You didn't even realize it.
You helped me get there.
Too far.
Flew too close to the sun. Let's go to our lightning round now. You guys know how this works. We are going to say some more stories, and we're each going to claim them by shouting our name if we want to talk about it. And first person to shout their name gets to comment on the story. For the entirety of the lightning round, you can give a rebuttal to one of the stories. So here we go. Oppenheimer dominated the 2024 BAFTA Sunday evening, winning 7 awards. Other notable winners include both Poor Things for special effects and The Zone of Interest for sound.
Scotty? Yeah, so the BAFTAs rarely line up beat for beat with the Academy Awards, but they still are a pretty good indicator of what to expect. So, with the Oscar ceremony just around the corner, I did think this was newsworthy and pretty interesting, especially with Oppenheimer cleaning up the way it did. It was really interesting, actually, because Christopher Nolan, even though, he holds American and British English citizenship or whatever, he's been nominated for BAFTAs before, but this was actually the first time he won. And so to pick up so many, I think was, really good for his career. But then, yeah, Poor Things getting special effects and Zone of Interest getting sound, entirely unexpected, but both really deserved. I'm wondering if that's like speaking to some, possible shakeups or, underdogs taking the cake come the Academy Awards.
Judalina Nera, executive producer on season 4 of The Boys and Gen V, will write and produce a reboot of Bewitched for Sony.
Haley? Cool. Can we erase the Nicole Kidman movie from memory then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great.
Joker Folie à Deux director Todd Phillips posted 3 photos featuring Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga in character. Also, commenting that an official trailer for the Joker follow-up is expected in mid-April.
Jay? This movie looks really interesting. I think Lady Gaga, just by every release, looks like a more compelling version of Harley Quinn in this story. We made a bet on last week's show about Deadpool 3 that it would make $1 billion. And I got curious because I started wondering, I could not think of a rated R movie that had made $1 billion. And I was like, I don't think there is one. And I just kept racking my brain. And so I Googled it. Has a rated R movie ever made $1 billion? Joker is the only rated R movie to ever make $1 billion, which I was surprised by. Wow. I knew that it did well, but I just, for some reason, did not remember that it had crossed that milestone. And so that movie, I knew it was well received, but obviously it got the awards, it got the reviews, all of that. But just reminding myself that it made $1 billion was a reminder, this movie's set up to do something really powerful. I really liked that first Joker movie. I thought I liked that it was in its own thing. And I think bringing in just some extra talent and the trailer for this is going to be fascinating, I think, when it finally comes out.
Netflix announced the 4th and final season of The Umbrella Academy will begin streaming on August 8th. Matt, cool. I'm excited that they know it's the final season before going into it. I always appreciate that. I really have enjoyed that show every season. So I'm digging the fact that they're hopefully going to end it well and give all those characters good resolution. Marvel Studios released the highly anticipated first teaser trailer for X-Men 97, a direct sequel to X-Men the Animated Series, premiering March 20th on Disney Plus and featuring Wolverine having his claws lit up by Gambit.
Scotty, I did have the chance to speak on this one already, so I wanted to open up the floor if anybody else wanted to chime in. But yeah, I am extremely excited for this one. And a little bit of news that came out with the trailer is we see the character of Morph, who appeared in the original run, and they have decided to adapt that character as non-binary, which I think is a really good choice and a good move for representation and diversity, especially considering the X-Men and his their power set rather. It makes a lot of sense, so I'm excited for it.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
And the marketing for this looked really cool. Like, they had the X-Men 97 logo, they didn't update it, they kept it the same, and then they put it on top of like a series of VHSs, which shows me that they know their audience. Like, they know who's coming to see this. Like, you watch the show growing up, you watched it on Saturday morning cartoons. Like, this is a continuation of that show, which I think is the right move. Like, you're leaning into what it is, which is cool.
Warner Brothers released a new trailer for Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, set to hit theaters on March 29th.
Scotty, I'll try to tread lightly here because I think the last time I was kind of disparaging towards this upcoming Godzilla film, it upset one of our listeners. So, if you're excited for this, I'll be catching it. I'll be seeing it. But I do have to say what I think has like kind of encapsulated this whole vibe of this movie is I saw a social media post where someone said they had the poster for, Godzilla x Kong, and it was Godzilla with his pink, spikes going down his spine there, and Godzilla with his infinity gauntlet, and they're both charging towards, and it says, rise together or fall alone. And the response to this was like, I cannot think of a more appropriate response to Japan's Godzilla -1 than basically a reboot of Lethal Weapon with Godzilla and Kong. And I was like, that is pretty perfect. I don't know if I can say it any better myself.
Oh man. Amazon dropped a trailer for Season 2, Part 2 of Invincible, which consists of 4 episodes and begins streaming on March 14th.
Scotty, this is 3 in a row for me, but yeah, I've been on record about how great Invincible is. The second season had a really strong start, and did a good job of seeding the villain that Sterling K. Brown is voicing. So to have his character come back into the forefront, I am definitely looking forward to and excited for that.
A teaser trailer has been released for the upcoming Borderlands movie. The film, which is based on the popular video game series, stars Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Cate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis, and Bobby Lee, and is set to hit theaters on August 9th. A full trailer will be released on Wednesday. Matt, this 9 seconds did its job. Like, it's a 9-second teaser for a trailer that will drop tomorrow, and I want to see this. I have no interest in the Borderlands franchise. They actually, I don't know, I don't really like the aesthetic very much from the games. I always thought they looked whatever. It didn't interest me at all. Watched some friends play it once. I was like, that doesn't look good to me. The whole idea of tons of guns, like, it's just not my kind of game. And this trailer had me in 9 seconds. I was like, I'm seeing this. Like, this looks great. And I think the tone looks really fun. It looks ridiculous and silly. And Jamie Lee Curtis in her, like, weird sci-fi era right now. Like, I just really like, I like what's going on in this trailer. So, yeah, I am very, very excited in 9 seconds. And maybe the extended trailer will disappoint, but, like, this 9 seconds got me. There's a lot of excitement around the rumor that Henry Cavill has signed on with Marvel Studios for an undisclosed role.
Haley, oh yeah, you know that Marvel was like, what, you don't want him, DC? We'll take him. And I want some scary Henry Cavill as Dr. Doom.
Okay.
Yeah. Sony Pictures and Oscar-winning filmmaker Sam Mendes have set plans to make 4 separate films for theatrical release, one focusing on each member of the Beatles. The films will be interconnected and tell each band member's point of view. Matt, I don't want to be greedy, but like, good. I think we're all too polite for this game. Like, we always play this game every week, and we all pause before we say our name. I don't want to. I want to talk, but I don't want to be like rude. It's the point. I got to be more rude. This sounds really, really cool, and particularly like fit for me. It's an interconnected universe about a band of musicians, and like, I love the idea of taking these characters and telling the story from their individual perspectives, because so often and I'm wondering how this was written, how it was researched, because so often in a biopic you get kind of like, this is the drummer's take on what happened, because like the rights were sold by the drummer and it's his story really, and it's sort of like whatever. But the idea of them taking these as 4 completely different stories and how their arcs happen, but then making it interconnected and like having it be a shared cinematic universe, the Beatles cinematic universe, I am into it. I am very into it. and just as a musician, like the Beatles are just, there's no one like them in the history of music. They hit on a certain thing that was just perfect for their time, and like they were too popular for the technology of the time. Like they had to stop playing live shows because there weren't sound systems big enough for them. Like they used to play at like stadiums, and the sound systems, the people were too loud. You couldn't hear their music. And so it was just screaming people. Like that is such a weird, like they had to advance the technology of sound systems to catch up with their popularity. That's just a weird and cool thing. And I am really excited to see this. It's really, really neat.
Yeah, Scotty with a rebuttal. I will say the two that I am most looking forward to are going to be the George Harrison and the John Lennon films. Those are kind of my two Beatles, but I thought of an anecdote when you were kind of talking about how the technology had to catch up with the Beatles. And one of my favorite like John Lennon anecdotes is how he would get frustrated because he couldn't hear himself sing over the fans. So with the song, I Want to Hold Your Hand, he would often say, I want to hold your gland, just to see if anybody would catch it.
I'm going to get in on this one real quick, too, to say that evidently there was a bidding war for this idea whenever it was pitched, and Sony had to pay a lot of money to be able to distribute these movies. So there's a lot of excitement in Hollywood around this. Scotty and I were talking before we recorded that. It looks like in the article that potentially the way it's written is that the plan might be to release all four in 1 year, and that year would be 2027,
Wow.
which I think actually is the right move. I don't know if you'd want to separate these types of films over 4 years or something. I think that might stretch them a little too thin. So I think that does make sense. But also it should be mentioned too that they have secured the rights for the Beatles music for these films. So it won't be one of those like weird music, biopics where it's like they're kind of singing songs that are sort of like the Beatles and they're supposed to kind of be Let It Be, but it's not Let It Be. They but they actually do have the rights to the songs, which is great.
Yeah, that is great. Did you guys see? I think it was HBO put out a Beatles documentary a few years ago. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody?
Is it the Peter Jackson one?
I think so.
That one is on
Disney,
Disney Plus. Right? Yeah, it's on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay, Disney Plus. Yeah, it like was so interesting to me. If this is the right one, it just let you watch a rehearsal with them sitting around rehearsing, and it is boring. But it is so fascinating. Like it's the opposite. It's two polar opposites. Because if it was anyone else in the world, it's just guys sitting around. But like it's the Beatles, and they're talking about how they're going to structure a song and like who's going to come in where. And it was weird as a musician watching it and being like, they're so much like guys I know. Like they're talking about music the same way guys do at a gig. And it's just so interesting to see that it's like so. I don't know. The nuts and bolts of music don't change in that way of rock music, where it's just like, oh yeah, the drums come in here, do something like this, da 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 da, and like even the attitudes of the band members, and the one guy who just never talks and he just plays this thing, and like it felt like I was watching my band through a weird time travel machine. It was weird. I really like that documentary.
It's called Get Back too, by the way, if you want to check that out.
Yes. And I think it's like multi-part thing.
Yeah, it is.
Mark Ruffalo clarified previous comments, telling fans that he, in fact, will not appear in Captain America: Brave New World.
Scotty, I hope this is a case of Marvel lying to us, because like we know all the pieces are there. You have Tim Blake Nelson coming back. You've got Harrison Ford appearing as Thunderbolt Ross, probably going to appear as the Red Hulk. You've got Liv Tyler coming back after her long hiatus, and sure, it was Edward Norton that was in that movie with her, but I have to imagine, Mark Ruffalo's kind of been one of those like mainstays. As like we've seen the core Avengers kind of go off and do their own thing. He's been kind of one of those that's still in the stable and still willing to appear in like post-credit scenes or pop up in She-Hulk. So I have to imagine he's willing to pop up in Brave New World, and I hope this is just a case of them misleading us for our excitement when the movie actually does hit the theater.
Up next, that was fast. Rogue One and the director Gareth Edwards is now steering the ship of the upcoming Jurassic World movie.
Haley, this is our new Fantastic Four casting.
Don't put that evil on me.
You better get invested real fast, Jay. No, Gareth Edwards is great. I know, Matt and Scotty, you reviewed The Creator, and while it wasn't your favorite thing, I think visually you enjoyed it, and he seems to do well with movies like that, and obviously the Jurassic movies are very visually focused, so hopefully this one sticks.
Spider-Verse producer Yuki Dimmers posted concept art on X of a Batman Beyond film that he and director Patrick Harpin pitched to DC and Warner Brothers 5 months ago.
Jay, if you have seen them, then I think they have a very like Spider-Verse vibe to them, which really piques, I think, a lot of, which is the reason that it was put out. It really like piqued everybody's interest. Like, I would really like to see this, if this was the direction you were going to take this in. And yeah, like it's really, if you haven't seen the images, you should go look at them, because I think like it does give a particular vibe to what this movie could have been. And it was never in production. But it was an idea that was pitched. And I don't know, I think like you could see maybe some interest come around it, like weirdly enough, like if enough people sort of kind of are feeling it, which I think a lot of people, it seemed like the conversation was very positive around it today.
Rebuttal. I think they need to make sure they differentiate it from Spider-Verse, because right now it just looks like the Batman Beyond character slapped over Spider-Verse. Yeah. And I don't think that's that interesting, but I think that production team could do something interesting. And the quotes were that we pitched this and we were told no, but then we were told maybe. So it's just kind of out in the stratosphere, like, hey, do you like this? Make it happen.
Yeah, that was exactly my take. I was going to say, it was just like, this feels like they did it 5 months ago and want it to happen, but it's still not. And they're like, hey, don't you want this, the internet? Tell us how much you want this. And I mean, I think it fits. It's a great idea. Obviously, like, Terry is like the successor of Batman, and it's like, just like Miles is for Spider-Man, and it just feels like it could be a good fit. But also, yeah, I agree. It needs to differentiate itself, because those pics looked so Spider-Verse. Whoever he's fighting even looks like the Spot.
Yeah, well, the unfortunate thing is it also runs the risk of like appearing derivative to audiences, because not only do you have, Terry taking the mantle from Batman, but you have, set in the distant future, and we're already seeing that with Spider-Man 2099 in the Spider-Verse films. So like,
that's true.
It's not their fault. I mean, Marvel and DC often have a lot of like similar threads like that, but the timing, they have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that wraps up our lightning round. Let's great show tonight, guys. Thanks for being here. Let's hear where everybody is online. Haley Hobbs.
Yes, I am over at Source Pages. If you want some more Dune talk, we're going to cover the second half of the novel next week. And then I'm on Bingers doing Oscars watch and Dune coverage. And so, yeah, check it all out.
Sweet. And Jay Sisson.
I am at Commute the Podcast, where you can come learn a couple interesting things on your way to work for about 20 minutes. We drop on Monday mornings, so come check it out.
Sweet. And J. Scotty St. Clair.
Yeah, I have been a regular contributor to both, branching coverages that Bingers Assemble is doing there with the Oscar coverage, as well as Dune, and then Animation Deliberation. We have taken a little bit of an unplanned hiatus there, but we are planning to come back in full force very soon.
Sweet. And, if you like this show, follow us on all the socials. Multiverse Newscast, I think most places, at Multiverse Newscast. And where's the one that it's not that?
That would be our Twitter.
Twitter is MN...
MV Newscast.
There you go, that thing. MV Newscast on Twitter, but all the other ones are at Multiverse Newscast. And we just created a TikTok, and we're gonna really try to be posting clips. We got to do it this week. There will be clips, or I drink your milkshake. All that next week. We'll talk more on Multiverse News. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.